Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family, in their passion, in their careers, and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Disciple Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Eric O'Neill, thanks so much for your time today.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Enjoyed your keynote here at RoarCon 24 in Dallas, Texas, the home of the Cowboys campus. You, from DC, you can't be a Cowboys fan.
No, I was a diehard Redskins fan growing up. I don't even know if you're allowed to say the name anymore, but hey, hail to the Redskins. Now they're gone, and I'm kind of teamless. But I love the rivalry, Redskins-Cowboys. Yes. You know, Thanksgiving, it was always the best with my family. I have three younger brothers and my father. We would watch every single game, and it's sad. But being here, not just to be here with Lion Guard for Roar.com, but to be at the training facility, it amps everything up. It's so much more exciting. Standing on the 50-yard line on the Star and talking to people and delivering a keynote. It's about as cool as it can get as a speaker.
It's really true. We're sitting here on the 20-yard line in an indoor full, I think that 8 high schools play here. This holds, they tell me, 5,000 people.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Indoor football stadium, arena. The facilities here are very impressive.
Yes, they definitely are. It's been neat to walk around and take calls, wandering along the end zone. You don't get that at a lot of hotel conferences that
you don't.
I speak at.
What about security attracts you, Eric?
I've been passionate about security since my days in the FBI. I mean, my training is in counterintelligence and counterterrorism. And so my work was in the FBI was to hunt spies and terrorists. And I was also very interested in how cybersecurity has evolved and has needed to evolve, and the fact that it wasn't evolving fast enough for me. Because for a long time, I've had this theory, which has been proved true, that cyber attacks were changing, that cyber attackers were getting smarter, that the old cyber criminals who were just trying to hit kids in college in these silly little ransomware schemes and lock them to get $100 a pop were transitioning. And what I realized was criminals are modeling the best in the business, which are spies. Cyber espionage is the new way that all espionage occurs. You see very little of the physical dead drops, signal sites, meets, in country that I was chasing after when I was in the FBI. Now the majority of attacks, obviously because our data is stored in computer systems, are attacking people to get at data in computers. And that is where espionage has shined. And if you look at the big purveyors of cyber espionage, you're looking at Russia, China. I mean, they have plenty of assets and a lot of sophistication. And then Iran and North Korea, who spend an enormous amount of time doing it for, well, more because they hate the West than they just want to data mine us for information. So in looking at this, cyber criminals have learned how to expand not only the sophistication of their attacks, but their attack surface and go after bigger and better targets, like cities, or supply chain, or large organizations. And so that's the threat. So my thought was, we need to change the way we think about cybersecurity, not going after some kid in a basement, but after an organized crime gang that is just as sophisticated as a Russian cyber threat actor.
But in order to, I mean, sir, when somebody comes in through the internet, through that means you can detect them. But doesn't it still take boots on the ground to figure out where these organizations are and what they're doing and what their cause is before they actually start trying to infiltrate system-wide?
There's a lot of work to try to root them out of the dark web, but it's difficult. We know where a lot of these attackers live. We know their identities. They've even been indicted in U.S. courts.
Wow.
But they live in places that have no extradition. And unless that country, who might not be very friendly to us right now, wants to play ball, they are immune from prosecution. Now, if they ever leave a Russia or a Belarus or a China or Iran or North Korea and they go, to Mallorca and go on vacation, we can grab them.
Wow.
But that doesn't happen.
So now we see this with Julian Assange.
Yes.
Right? So he's been released. Has he been released?
He has been released, yes.
Released. So he was in the Ecuadorian embassy in London?
Yes, and then he was arrested. So there was the Ecuadorian, I think they finally had enough of him.
I see.
There's a little,
like
but
10 years?
But he's a nutcase too.
Yeah.
And then he was arrested and he was in prison in London. And then there was finally a decision that he was going to get a really quick arraignment and penalty, and then was going to be released for time served in the U.S. And he agreed that he would go to one of our outlying territories, not actually set foot in the continental United States.
Whoa.
And that's how he ended up, landing really quickly. It all happened right as he got off the plane, then got back on the plane and flew off.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he can't be in the continental U.S.
Well, he technically he could, but he's a felon. But he's already been given credit for time served in the London prison.
I see.
Right.
Does this happen often, Eric?
No, that's very unique.
Okay.
He's a very unique bad guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, why is he bad?
Well, because what he did, now, there are many people who say that WikiLeaks is journalism. I disagree, because many journalists are not going to publish very critical, sensitive documents that can cause trouble that they can't even see because they don't understand the national security implications. Most will be very careful with that. Taking aside all of the Manning issues, one thing that he did do, or that WikiLeaks did do, is it allowed Russia to attack our election in 2016.
Wow.
Coordinate and weaponize the data that they were able to steal from the campaigns, and then publish it on WikiLeaks in a way that caused a lot of damage and distrust in our politics. That's a big problem. So we don't need a company that is out there that purports to be a journalist, but actually is doing some of that. And perhaps there is good journalism, but is also a dumping ground for everyone who has a gripe with their company or against the country that they have some sort of clearance, and they're dumping national security information there.
So, I mean, if we steel man this, he would say what? In his defense, he's doing it because what? I don't even know.
Because information should be open and free.
I see.
But in the world of national security, that is not true at all.
Because there's a limit.
Right, you don't want a lot of transparency in top secret data. There's a reason that it is secure. If it gets out there to the people who should know it, then operations fail and people die.
And we have the other example of the gentleman who I think in Moscow still was at the NSA. I can't remember his name. It slips my mind all of a sudden. Very, very popular.
Are you talking about the New York Times reporter?
No, oh no.
Or are you talking about the former Marine?
No, he was at the NSA and he leaked all this stuff and he went to Russia and I think he's still there. Very, can't think of his name right now. It'll come to me.
Oh, you're talking about Edward Snowden.
Snowden.
He's just a bum.
Explain. Snowden.
I'm happy to say that.
Yes.
Because of what he did. Look, he exposed the fact that the NSA was able to listen into, purportedly able to listen into, private communications, cell communications of American citizens through a program called PRISM. So what PRISM was doing is it was using technology to listen in on communications for code phrases like kill the president, blow up Manhattan, things like that. The kind of things that we would want to kind of have an idea on.
Yeah.
And then his issue was, maybe private consultants who were barely trained, who were kind of losers like him, could then listen into it, but could also, at their will, go deeper and listen into communications, which we really don't want people doing. Now, yeah, maybe that's a good thing to expose, but instead of just exposing that thing, and he says he tried to go through NSA channels, but it's not like he went to a representative or a senator on the other side of the aisle who would have absolutely blown that up, right? Instead, what he did is he created a crawling program that data mined the NSA, stole all sorts of information about all sorts of programs, and then traveled through China and Russia and sought asylum in Russia. So the NSA had to disavow everything, all of their programs, because they couldn't know, based on that program. Even Snowden has even said he doesn't know what he stole, whether it's in the hands of the Russians and the Chinese. So that's a huge problem. Our NSA was blind for a while they rebuilt all those programs.
What's going to be the recourse there? Any thought?
He'll never leave Russia.
Right.
And I'll tell you why. Because he hasn't just been hanging out in asylum. I guarantee that Russian intelligence has spent an enormous amount of time asking him questions about everything related to his work in the NSA and learned a lot about us. And that's bad for the NSA. On the other side, the questions they asked, the way they asked it, the people who asked the questions, and where he was is golden intelligence for the US. And so they will never hand him back.
Wow. What should be his punishment?
Well, he's going to spend the rest of his life in Russia, and he can never leave.
Are there going to be more Snowdens and Assanges?
I'm sure. I mean, there'll always be spies. There are always disgruntled narcissists who feel like they got to make themselves better and make themselves more famous by dropping secrets.
Jeez. What should we know as the American public about the FBI?
Well, look, the FBI lately is a little bit maligned, and I'm sad about that. I think that the FBI should not get engaged in politics. I actually write in my book, Gray Day, that the FBI should remain apolitical. They get themselves in trouble when they do that, but that is sort of the top echelon executive class in the FBI. What everyone should know about the FBI is in the rank and file, the people who, like me when I was undercover as a ghost, who are doing the real work, are doing amazing work that protects this country, that protects democracy. There are so many issues that could have been catastrophic that are solved by the FBI without the population knowing. Terrorist attacks, massive espionage, spies that are active, huge cyber crimes and threats. The FBI is critical to the United States and to securing the security in the United States, and without the FBI, we'd be in a lot of trouble.
So we have an incident recently where the Secret Service and the assassination of the attempt on the president, we just had a resignation today, I believe.
Or yesterday. Today or yesterday of the director of the Secret Service.
Is that part of the FBI?
No, the Secret Service is completely separate from the FBI.
See,
yes, it's part of the FBI is part of the Department of Justice. The Secret Service is part of the Department of Treasury.
There's something on there. And the CIA?
And the CIA is its own agency.
I see. It's not under Treasury or...
No, it's not under Justice or Treasury.
And do you talk to each other?
So when I was working the Robert Hanssen case, one of the reasons that Hanssen, was arguably the most damaging spy in U.S. history, is able to get away with it for so long, is because historically the FBI and the CIA did not hold hands. They were looking at each other, they weren't doing a good job in coordinating, and it allowed Hanssen to sort of tiptoe through all of the security and avoid being caught. That's gotten much better since then. The FBI and CIA learned a lot of lessons, and in fact, at the end of his career, it was a joint FBI-CIA task force that was able to recruit the mole, the Russian former KGB intelligence officer, who gave up Hanssen at the end of his career. So it's gotten much better.
FBI is domestic, CIA is international.
Yes, mostly. So CIA's mandate is fully international. So when you see those TV shows where CIA operatives are shooting guns and working all over the United States, that's just BS. That doesn't actually happen. The FBI is domestic, and so they do a huge number of things to protect the nation against domestic and international threats operating here in the United States. The CIA is working overseas to gather intelligence that does a lot of things, including providing information to the FBI that allows the FBI to make that intelligence actionable and perform the operations they have to here in the U.S.
Is it lucrative to be a spy, Eric? Or why do these people do it?
Well, it's very lucrative.
It
You can make
is.
an enormous amount of money being a spy, and you can make it very fast. Now, you're probably going to get caught, because most spies do. But people who are greedy, and people, like I said, who are narcissists, who just think they should be richer than they are and think that they're better than they really are, and then have some triggering event. You know, I can't pay my mortgage. I have a gambling debt. My wife just left me. I'm really, really pissed at my boss, or I'm really, really pissed at my agency. Those can be the ingredients to make a spy.
Yeah, you know, you always hear the stories of, you know, the Unabomber, or these people who do something so tragic, and everybody always describes them as kind of a loner. And I mean, does the FBI have files on these people? How does that?
Well, it just depends. I mean, you would hope that someone was flagged,
Right.
but there are a lot of people, and the FBI is not a big enough agency to. It's not like the FSB in Russia where they're looking at everybody. You know, if you go into that country, they're looking at you, they're following you, they know about you. We don't have the manpower for that here. But technology is helping. It's helping assist, and I think the best early warning system for this are people. People who say, this guy's a problem. This guy has said this. This kid in the school, you know, is talking about bringing a gun to school. This person here is talking about blowing up his building. You know, that can be, you know, the early warning system that allows a law enforcement agency, and maybe not the FBI, the police or others, to take a look before the catastrophic attempt happens. So that's really where we want to go with security.
And we, as the American public, we hear this in the last couple of years. If you see something, say something.
Yes. And that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
You don't want to keep silent. It's kind of like there are no bad questions here. You know, if you feel like something is wrong, like throw it out there. It's a tip, and if it's just garbage or it's bogus or it doesn't make any sense, at least it gets looked at.
Once you leave the FBI, do you ever truly leave? Do you ever have to kind of communicate with them? I mean, you're on there. How does that work?
Well, I need to submit every manuscript for every book I write to them, and they get to do the pre-publication review to make sure I'm not accidentally divulging some case I worked on or some aspect of a case that might still be confidential or still be top secret. That's what we're looking for, right? The secret information.
Sure.
Yeah.
And even a discussion like this that's being recorded, if they ever hear that and they hear something, it has to be stricken. How does that work?
Oh, that wouldn't happen. I just get in trouble. I just need to be careful.
I see.
So, you know, I stick with the cases that I can talk about, like everything I wrote in my book, Gray Day.
Yeah.
All those cases are germane and were vetted by the FBI, and I'm allowed. And I'm finishing my second book right now, The Invisible Threat. I'll send it to the FBI shortly, and they'll vet that before it goes to my publisher.
How long do they turn it around?
They say 45 days, but I think the only person who's ever made it in under 45 days was the former director Comey when he wrote his book. But they're pretty fast. They were great. They even declassified the code name, Hansen's code name, Gray Day, which is what became the title for my book.
Interesting.
I never used it in the book until the FBI was kind enough to declassify that for me.
Just a coincidence?
No, I asked.
Oh, you asked. What's your writing process, Eric?
I outline. So I think about what I want to say, and I structure it, and then I chapter it. So I come out with a skeleton, which is a beginning, middle, and end structure. I turn that into how many chapters I think I need, and then I write a few paragraphs for every chapter so that I'm starting putting meat on the bones. And then once I feel like it sounds good, just reading it through like that, kind of like a movie script, I expand it. So each chapter becomes its own little story, and then each of them has to march and sing with each other and create a whole. And it's a long process, but it's the one that works for me.
Do you have the reader in mind as you're writing?
Yes, I'm thinking about the reader as all along the process. And I
Really?
also have a number of friends and family members and professionals who are my beta readers who are reading with me as I finish a large section or something that I just want somebody to say. Do you understand this? You know nothing about technology, and we're talking about cybercrime. And if they say yes, and the guy who has been a CISO for years says, oh, I love this, I know I'm hitting.
Could you ever write fiction?
I have written fiction. I've got my first fiction book. It's ready. It's in the can. I'll publish it after my next nonfiction.
And is it in the same genre?
It's in the spy genre.
Yeah,
It's a spy thriller.
Yeah, and I get to talk to fiction writers, and it's just amazing to me how they kind of outline these characters, and they tell me that as they're writing, the character goes in another
Yes,
direction.
fiction's a lot more fun. The book I wrote was written. It was written from the perspective of a male protagonist who was an FBI agent, and as I was writing, his twin sister, who I thought was just going to be sort of the driving force for the antagonist here, it was going to move him along, move his character along, was just much more interesting, and was saying, I want you to tell my story. So I went back to the beginning, I restarted it from her perspective, and it was a much, much better book.
So I can't gloss over this, Eric. She was telling you she wants her story heard? I mean,
Absolutely.
How's that? She doesn't exist. How does that?
She was much more fun. She was more dynamic, and her background just kept getting cooler as I was writing this secondary character, and so I swapped them.
Have you always had an imagination?
Yes, I've always had my number one thing on my bucket list was always to be a published author.
Really?
Yeah, it's what I always wanted.
Einstein said imagination is more important than intelligence, right? I when I speak to fiction authors, it's amazing to me that happens. Same things with musicians. They start writing a song and it ends up going in a different direction.
Yeah.
Same thing with all art.
I think fiction is harder to get published. Because it's whole cloth. There's nothing behind it. It's just your imagination, and it either sounds really good and it's readable and people love it, or they don't. Whereas nonfiction is a little easier to get published, but it's a lot harder to write. Right? Because it's true and it's fact-based and it has to be researched and there's so much work. Writing fiction is a joy. Now, I love writing my nonfiction too, but it's a lot more work that goes into it than the fun I have in writing my first draft in fiction. And then it gets hard because the refining and the cutting is the worst. When you have to cut a character or you have to cut something you spent days or weeks on and you think it's amazing when no one else does, that can be really painful. It's like cutting off a piece of you.
Now, there's plenty of these mini-series on television, all the streaming services that have FBI agents, that have spies. Which one do you like that really holds true? Because I have some friends in the service and they're like, don't watch it. It's entertaining, but it's not close.
Well, I'll give you two. I'll give you an absolutely crazy fictional one, and I'll give you one that's true.
Good.
So and I'm a little biased. I just shot I think their best episode. Once again, a little biased, on the show FBI True, which is a great show. It's on Paramount Plus now. It's on the Paramount Network. But what it does is it takes true FBI stories and creates them documentary style with the FBI asset who was involved in the case telling the story.
Wow.
So it was a lot of fun to walk back through, and we went to Hanson's house. We went to the bridge on Foxstone Park. It's the only TV show that's ever been shot in the courtyard of FBI headquarters, Wow. No one else has ever had that access. And we shot a huge part of it there. It was really cool to get back to headquarters.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of on location, and the episode just came out so exceptionally. My favorite FBI show that I loved was X-Files. A huge X-Files nut. I'm a nerd for that show. I could still sit down and watch Mulder and Scully go at it. The will they, won't they tension. It was the best. I loved how you could just jump into an episode and watch it for what it was, or like see the B story thread that threaded them all together somehow and see that, and I love that show, and I still do.
And the FBI True, does the FBI have to bless each one?
The FBI does work with them.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's former agents. The producer is a former agent. The host is a former agent. It's a brilliant show.
Wow, I never heard. That's really, really cool. And obviously they can't go in. Well, these are closed cases.
Yes, they're closed cases.
Once a case is closed, is it open? Is it part of Freedom of Information Act? Can we all see it?
You can see it, but a lot of them are redacted, and most people don't know about them.
We're here at the big RoarCon event, and it's all managed service providers. You had a great keynote this morning. There's a book signing too. What do you know and like about the managed service provider community?
Well, I think it's critical because managed service providers are one of the ways that consumers understand technology. Right? So MSPs are in the middle between tech companies that are developing these things and helping consumers be educated on this is what I should use for me. This is what fits for me. Here's the company that I've put together, and they can tell you this is the security solution you should have. But educating those MSPs is very important. One thing that I do with a new company I just started is helping tech companies understand how to translate the technology they're selling to someone who might not be, super technically activated,
Wow.
right? And that's what MSPs are doing, right? They're trying to they're finding a way to resell this technology to their clients, make sure it's a fit. And that's really important. So I think that these conferences like RoarCon are critical, because this is how everybody's learning together in what are the best in breed out there, what should we be selling, how should we be selling it, and what makes the most sense for our clients.
Yeah, I've been a part of the MSP community for 30 years. I love it, but what you did and continue to do and write about just fascinates me. And thanks so much for your time today. You did a really great job. Anybody listening, how can they get in touch with you?
Sure. Well, reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, and Eric O'Neill. You can find me. I'll pop right up. And I've been doing a lot more on LinkedIn, but also go to my website. It's www.ericoneill.net. And at the top, you can subscribe to a newsletter that I'm putting together, and you'll get some goodies, and I can keep in touch with you that way too.
Eric, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Thanks.
Right on.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Disciple Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypinz.com. There you'll find lots of resources, and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Disciple Conversations.